Alright, so I'm recording this video the next day after the oil change and spark plugs. So, still has the miss, but I think I know what it is. Car was running fine and boosting fine, and out of nowhere it started having this issue. But what I do notice is my wideband goes pig rich. I did fill up at a different gas station with their E85, and I'm wondering if it's a bad tank. This is all the more reason why you should definitely go with the flex fuel, because if it is a lower ethanol content, which is probably what it is, that would explain why it's flooding itself out. It would compensate for that. So this is why I stick to the 2 gas stations near my house that I know work. But I was out and about the night before and stopped at another gas station and used their E85 pump. So something to keep in mind. So now I just got to waste 3/4 of a tank of gas and go back to the gas station that I know where it works. So I guess until then I just got to put some miles on the car and get this gas out, or just pump it out, which is definitely a possibility. I might do that because it's probably going to take a long time to run through this tank. So yeah, if you have access to have a flex fuel sensor and have your car have true flex fuel, it's definitely the way to go. I need to get on seeing if that Dyne mod can do flex fuel with the mass airflow sensor. But all right, I just want to make this video. I'm on my way to work right now, so yeah, still doing the same thing. It's just flooding out, going 10.0, richer than 10.0. My gauge only goes to 10.0 AFR. So all right, well, I'll see you when I get this gas tank empty. All right, we're back in the car. We're running that gas tank down. See the gas lights on. We're just cruising, trying to waste this pump gas. I got the laptop out. Just driving around. So headed back towards the gas station, going to one of the 2 gas stations I always use for E85. It's never been a problem. So like I said, I can't reiterate, this is another reason why, if you have the option to do an actual flex fuel setup, go ahead and do it. It'll save you on this trouble here. So the spark plugs, I made a comment and responded to someone. The spark plugs were not the issue. The issue was the gas station apparently put pump gas of some form. I don't know if it was 87, 93, what it was, but it was not E85 and the E85 pump. So I didn't notice driving around that whole night as I was just cruising. And obviously if you're in closed loop fueling, the car will compensate and you will not even know the difference. It's not until you full throttle it, which is why when I was going to do some draggy hits, the car started sputtering. I didn't have my laptop with me or anything, so I did notice the car was running rich. Obviously I didn't realize how rich, but when I did plug in the laptop, my fuel trims were negative 30% at idle, and my idle AFR was dialed in pretty close, plus or minus like 2%, 1%. So that immediately told me that the ethanol content was not there anymore. So like I said, I've always tuned this car since I put it together off of the fuel trims, so I don't exactly know what the ethanol content is percentage wise. I do know that around 30% or so is where 30% or so fuel trim wise is where the car normally sits, and that's where my map is dialed in for. So all the more reason why you want an ethanol sensor is if for some reason I filled up and it was, you know, I'm assuming I'm getting somewhere between like a 60%, somewhere in that ballpark, ethanol content from these pumps. But if I filled up and for some reason it was 30%, I would hopefully notice my AFR gauge being a little more rich than normal. That would tell me that the ethanol content is not there. And obviously be cautious of the timing. But the timing that I'm running on this car is actually, you could probably get away on 93 pump. So it's not a crazy amount of timing on E85, because I the pumps out here have a sticker that says anywhere between 51 to 83% ethanol content from the 2 gas stations that I use on a regular basis. There are some other gas stations like Racetrack and whatnot that will say a minimum of 71, 73% ethanol. Since, as far as I know, there's no regulation on ethanol content from an E85 pump, as long as they state what a range. So mine can be as low as 50%, the 2 gas stations that I use. So everything that I have tune-wise is set up for technically worst case scenario at a 50% ethanol. The timing I'm running is designed for a 50% ethanol mix. Like I said, off of fuel trims only, I'm guessing it's around a 50% to 60% ethanol. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, when you just have dual maps and you're trying to flash back and forth, or even just running on one E85 map, there's a lot up to chance, and you're kind of tuning within a window of hopefully not too much of a variance. But yeah, I need to get that ethanol sensor wired in so I can actually set it up to be able to adjust itself. That would have saved me a lot of trouble this whole last week. But I went ahead and just adjusted the injector scaling, pulled some timing out, and just because I didn't know if it was 87 or 93, and just been driving around on that. I've been getting on it. It does fine. Still 22 pounds or so, 23 pounds. So, but yeah, right now we're getting pretty close to empty. So I'm not too far from the gas station. I'm gonna go fill it up, and I'll show you the fuel trims as I let the car idle and let the fuel trim start shifting. And once everything shifts over and mixes very well, it should be anywhere between 25 to 30% of fuel that it's adding to hit the AFR, the target AFR 14.7. And then I know that I'm good for flashing my map back on. And yeah, we'll go from there, and I'll do a couple pulls, make sure that everything's looking good. My AFRs are good at wide open. But yeah, we're not too far away, so I'll pick it back up once we get the gas in there, and we'll watch this, watch the fuel trims adjust as the fuel mixes. All right, we're at the gas station, E85, but this is what I was talking about, 51 to 83% ethanol only. So there's no regulation that it needs to be 85% ethanol out of there, but they do have a range, and this pump is somewhere in that 30%. All right, so normally with the deadhead system, I would take me to, I could start it up, the fuel trims would be perfectly fine. It would take a couple minutes for it to really blend the system together, all the fuel and everything, and then it would stabilize. But since I changed the setup, I'm pretty sure it's going to transition pretty fast, because as soon as I hit the key, it's going to feed whatever fuel was in the lines through and immediately start picking up the ethanol. So I topped off the gas tank completely. So let's see how fast it actually, there we go. So the car won't go into closed loop fueling for a few seconds, and it should immediately start pulling fuel. Start adding fuel, sorry, not pulling fuel. So yeah, we're 21% so far, 23, 25. Let's see where it stabilizes. It looks like it might want to stay right around there. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be somewhere around 25% combined. So 27 there, 28. Yeah, so it looks like we're good on the ethanol from what I normally am used to seeing, between 25 to 30%. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out of this pump right now and go park off to the side so I can flash the car over to my original map. Yeah, so look at 20, 29, almost 30% so far. So yeah, everything's looking good. Let me flash it over and we'll check it out again. All right, so I'm parked over here off to the side. It's been running for like 30 seconds to a minute, but yep, targeting where it wants to target, and we are now, where are we at? Stabilize for a second. I have the AC on, so when the compressor kicks on and off, it kind of throws everything around, but 32%. So yeah, I mean, that's everything where it should be. But this is a prime example of, just because you put E85 or pump and it's not the correct for the map, for the most part, the car will try to compensate. As you can see, it's targeting 14.7, which it's holding. But if you don't have an access port to look at your fuel trims, or you don't have a laptop to look at your fuel trims, it may be targeting and holding the AFR and drive okay. It might have some weird issues, but it's only because the computer's compensating so much. So now we're already up to 35% almost. 32, 33. So the car will compensate for the most part, and especially if you're driving on the highway without full load, the car will try to compensate as quick as it can and as much as it can. But the only true way to tell is obviously under wide open throttle. The car will not resort back to your fuel trims. It will just go to what was programmed in the car, and that's when you will start to see the issue, especially on Subarus. I believe it switches from open loop or closed loop to open loop around, I think it's a very small amount, 3 to 5 psi is when it starts to transition. So you could be partial throttle. As soon as it gets to about that point, it'll transition over, and that's when it would start having the problems. Or just straight wide open throttle. But yeah, so we're down to, where are we at? 20, 31, 32, somewhere in there. So and the reason why I'm saying 30 some is your fuel trim correction is what it's doing at the moment. That will always kind of bounce around here and there. But as it learns whatever here, it will transition that number back to here. So this is what it's already learned at idle to add 15%, and it's still adding 17% on top of that. But if I sit here and let it idle long enough, this will eventually go down to 0. And obviously, like I say, when the AC turns on and off, it does slight corrections, but it will get as close to 0 as possible. And then this number should transition all the way back over to 30%. 32%, or whatever these are adding together. The problem is, depends on the car. Oops, that's what happens when you don't touch your laptop. Depending on the car, each one will max out at a certain amount. The immediate correction, I believe maxes out at 25%. I don't remember if this is 25% as well, so you have a maximum of 50% compensation. But this one definitely is 25% where it maxes out. I forgot where the learning is. I would have to mess with it to try to get it to completely start trying to correct long term. But I mean, I guess if I let it idle here long enough, we'll find out if it stops at 25% and then just leaves the remaining 7% over here on the short term. Since we're already up to 18.75, 19.53. So we'll let it, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and let it sit here right now, and we'll see what it does, where it maxes out, because I know the short term is 25%. So, but yeah, I'm gonna let it run for a little bit and we'll jump back in, check it out. All right, we're back here. So the car's been running for a little bit more. I think this is where it's going to stabilize, but as I said, when I originally started the car, we were got about 32%. So we're at 32. Bam, just changed right on the dot. And now your short term is sitting as close to 0 as possible. Like I said, with the AC turning on and off, it does jump back and forth, but this is probably where it's going to stay. For the most part, it sits at close to 0. When the clutch engages, it'll get rich or lean, and it adjusts immediately. But yeah, the car's finalizing its fuel trim, so we're at 31% right now. But I wanted to show you this table that I have from Carberry, which is for the 02 to 05 WRXs, just so you can, let's see where we at. So, of how you can use the fuel trims to find your ethanol content. But this is off of another tune. But if you look right here, if we're at 30%, adding fuel about 30%, if you go up here, I don't know if you can see that, it looks kind of, but that says 30%, 50% ethanol content. So this is a table that, as it reads more ethanol, it'll start adding more fueling, all the way up to an E100, which is about 56%. So obviously this is not exact, but this is a pretty good trim. This is from my buddy's car, and he's had that car for put together 3-4 years, something like that, on E85, and it's on flex fuel setup through Carberry, and he's always ran it out there in Cali, and just fills up pump E85 all the time, no problem starting, no nothing. But just so people can understand, there is a linear calculation that the fuel will transition as the ethanol content goes up. So like I said, with me being right now at, where are we at, 32%, that falls right in line with what I was thinking, somewhere around 50% ethanol. So I'm tuning everything timing wise and whatnot based on a E50 mix. So I'm pretty sure I've never even had a full E85 tank in here, but I just fill up through the pump, and like I said, I just showed the clip. The pump states anywhere between 51 to 83% ethanol. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But I'm going to go ahead and flash my map back over. But we're up to we got up to 32%. So I guess the learning can go up pretty high. So I'm not sure exactly where it's at. Maybe one day I can change the injector scaling just to see where it maxes out. If anyone wants to know, this is the information that I like to know, just because it's good information. A lot of people don't really talk about it, but I have filled up on my E85 map with pump gas, and vice versa on pump gas with E85 map. You can drive the car will compensate. The two big things that you do not want to do is do not go into boost. So if you're just trying to get yourself back home or whatnot, stay in vacuum as much as possible, because the car will compensate for the fueling side of it. It might have some weird judders on like the tip ends and whatnot, but for the most part, the car will compensate fueling wise. And in all reality, if you're in vacuum, your timing shouldn't be that drastic difference compared to from E85 and pump, or vice versa. The main difference comes from when you start going into boost, when you can really start advancing the timing. So yeah, it is, if you're in this situation like I was, you can drive the car around and it's not going to hurt it as long as you stay out of boost. If you go into boost, you can definitely do some damage, more so if you're on your pump gas map and you put E85 in the car, because the car will be extremely lean. You won't hurt the car from detonation necessarily, because the timing is a lot safer on pump gas, but it will lean out the car very much and you can crack a piston. So do not do that. Idling, driving around in vacuum, you're not really going to hurt the car. And like I said, with the car compensating, you are perfectly safe to do that. Obviously the car's been idling perfectly fine, no issues, no hiccups or nothing, because it's been adjusting on the fly this whole time I've been sitting here. So but yeah, if you don't have a flex fuel sensor, one, try to get a flex fuel system set up on your car where it'll actually do all the compensations for you, and be proper, where the ECU does know what it's doing. But if worst case scenario, you can fill it up with either fuel on either map and mix and match, and you can get yourself to wherever you need to go. So and that's right there. So the cars do pretty amazing on adjusting fuel while it's running, and most people never even notice that it does it. So all right, let me go ahead and flash this map over, and we're going to go ahead and see what's going on here. All right, so we went ahead and just flashed the E85 map back. Car's kind of stabilizing, so it's learning a little. But so right now, as you can see, fuel trim's a lot better. So since we got a negative 1.5 and 1.3, we're at 0.7 or so. Yeah, so we got pretty tight tolerance there at idle, so it's not bad. If I turn the AC off, it definitely is better, but I can live with that. 4%, a little on the rich side as opposed to the lean side, which I always prefer. For some weird reason, which is kind of funny, if you're ever a little lean and the car has to compensate, you can feel that when you're driving around. What I notice is if you're a little rich, like that, a couple percent, and the car needs to pull fuel, when you like tip in or get on it, you never feel it at all. The car is a lot better. So if you're dialing in your fueling, obviously goal is 0, but a little on the rich side, like a couple percent, is really not that big a deal. So you'd much rather be on the rich side as opposed to the lean side when you're driving around. So just keep that in mind. I know everyone wants to try to target 0, but in all reality, you're never going to get a straight up 0, because it's going to depend on if your AC's on, if you move your steering wheel. There's so many factors, and every car in stock form does the same thing as well. So from my job, and I diag cars, so I look at scan tool data all the time. So I've learned fuel trims in and out, what they're telling you, what it can do, and no car's ever 0. So they try to target 0, but there's so many factors on a car, especially a mass airflow car, that can change your fuel trims. I mean, obviously every car, even speed density, will change the fuel trims with any load compensation, temperature shifts, whatnot. So yeah, I mean, just get it as close as possible. Nothing's ever going to be 0 at all times, so don't freak out about your fuel trims if they're bouncing around. Your biggest, I guess you could say, your biggest concern would be your learning. Your learning is going to be something that it learns over time, but this is part of the reason why you don't want to be flashing maps back to back to back to back. I mean, granted, they should be tuned pretty legit and not have to compensate very much, but the more you drive on a map, the more fine-tuned the car will get it in vacuum. So your drivability will clean up a fair amount just driving around normal over time. So I've noticed that my car does do better and better when it can clean up the small inconsistencies like this right here. See, 3%. So I'm a little 3% rich, but it's learned that, and just let the car do its thing. It'll learn over time. The longer you drive on that map, the better it'll drive. At least from the, like I said, from the aspect of closed loop fueling, where the car can compensate. But under wide open throttle, your map is what your map is. So keep that in mind. Drivability is obviously a big concern for me as well, but your car will clean up some small stuff here and there the longer you drive on that map. So so don't spend too much time trying to get everything dialed in on your closed loop map, because any little thing will throw off your values from one day to the next, and you can just be fighting yourself and going in circles. So yeah, I mean, obviously I like to at least try to keep it single digits, and like I said, where it's at right now, yeah, right there we're at -3, -4, now we're at 1.5. So I mean, it's pretty close to as 0 as you can get. And like I said, with the AC on, that definitely is the reason why it bounces around every once in a while when the clutch engages and stuff. So all right, well, I'm gonna go do some driving, and we're gonna see how she feels. I haven't been on E85 for this whole week, man, and it's not good. E85 is amazing, and it runs so much better. It smells awesome, which is probably one of the bigger things. Probably not the greatest thing to be sniffing fuel, but hey, you know, I get some extra money out of that, so some enjoyment for myself. But yeah, we're gonna go take it for a spin and let's get some E85 back through this motor. All right, so we're driving. Feels good. I did a couple little pulls in third. It's a little hard to do it with holding my phone in my hand, but let's do a little third right here. She sounds good, man. Oh yeah. Yeah, she's alive. It's got that E85. The car feels so much better on E85. I can't even drive this thing on pump gas, man. It's so depressing. But she feels good. We're back in action. So yeah, get a flex fuel sensor and don't have a bad week like me. You know how hard it is to have people come up and want to run and know you're not going to give it your all because you don't have all the fuel that you need. But yeah, so we're cruising down the freeway and you can see the fuel trim still pretty close, dialed in pretty good. So like I said, I drove all the way to Dallas for Texas 2K, and I got about 280, almost 300 miles to a full tank. It did extremely well on the freeway on E85, so it's not too shabby. So one thing I do want to ask, if anyone knows, I saw the setting, and I guess I could just play with the numbers, but there is a setting in there for your gauge for the range of how many miles you have left and whatnot. The fuel compensation or fuel, I forgot what it was called, but there's a table that I saw on ROM Raider that has a value. If anyone knows what the value is for E85, I don't know if I should just do like 30% of whatever's in there and see how close it comes. I might just do that and flash that back on the car. But if you have an actual value of what it should be, reach out, let me know. Saving the trouble of flashing back and forth trying to get it as close as possible. But yeah, so it thinks it has fuel, gasoline in it, so obviously the miles per gallon and the range is going to be off. But yeah, so we're back in action, man. I can finally start driving around on full boost if I want to. Like I said, I normally just stay in sport. It's around 23 and a half pounds. That's definitely plenty. But now I can try to go to the dyno, because that whole tank of regular fuel kind of ruined my whole chances of taking the car to the dyno. So yeah, everything's good, man. We're good. I'm gonna go back into work week, but I want to try to schedule that dyno and get out there and let's see what this car does actually make. So yeah, we'll see. This is gonna be probably a shorter video. I don't know how long it's gonna be when I edit it all together, but I've been just taking it easy the last couple weeks. So there's a couple things I want to change on this 15 STI. I have the new 18 plus multifunction display up there that I want to toss in. I definitely want to do the iDoing head unit, and I have a newer steering wheel because this one's a little chewed up. But other than that, there's not going to be too much going on with the 15. But now that I at least got this sorted, I want to get back on getting my other cars together. So all right, well, see you guys next time.